All right, so welcome to the first ever edition of the Grim Wisdom Podcast. That's what we're calling it because the idea is that we're going to enlighten you and you're not going to like it. So that's the idea behind the concept, or the concept behind the name, I should say. So you can tell I haven't done this before. Anyway, with me tonight is Jennifer Siciliano. She's going to be helping me out.
How are you, Grant?
How are you, Jennifer?
Good.
We're gonna rock your mind and blow your world. Wait, blow your mind and rock your world. That's what I meant to say. So, without further ado, let's get on to the first subject of the night. I think probably, at least for the first few of these podcasts, we're going to be talking about Rhode Island politics. Not as such, not really to enlighten people about Rhode Island politics, but as a platform to talk about how totally fucked we all are and what a grim and pleasant place the world is to live in. And also Jennifer may have some things she wants to say. So
sure.
What's on your mind? What do you want to get accomplished tonight, Jennifer?
Well, I just, I feel like I'm going to, just go ahead and talk. Let's see. Well, I thought you were going to come up with a topic, and then I would ask you questions about whatever we're going to talk about. What were we going to talk about?
I'm sorry to disappoint you. Maybe I should have set the expectations a little more clearly. Let's start with the topic of, so here we have Sheldon Whitehouse, and we just saw him on TV, and he was telling us about how he's all for polluting the environment as long as he doesn't take the hit for it. What else did he say? Oh, and he weighed in on the bridge tolls. He's totally in favor of it, but also doesn't want to be held accountable for that either. And I think this is really the major takeaway from that conversation. It's something that I've said before, so longtime viewers of the show, or listeners of the show, will probably see me revisit this, or hear me revisit this. But whenever you're talking to a politician...
Well, I think, wait a minute. One of the things is that Sheldon didn't actually say those things. I just want to say that. I mean, you're saying that the essence of what he said were that he wants to pollute the world and that he's for the tolls, but he didn't actually say that.
Right, so I think one of the problems with the world is that people don't ever say what they mean, and so you have to unpack the bullshit that they say in order to figure out what they mean. And sometimes you get it wrong, but more often than not, it's pretty easy to tell what they're trying not to say. You know, we're reading right now for your book club, and
yes.
You can't see this if you're listening, but I'm pointing my finger at Jennifer here. We're reading this for your book club, The New Jim Crow, and The New Jim Crow talks about how racism operates, and there's a great bit in there about how the Supreme Court says it's totally okay to discriminate against people for being black. You can't. It's totally okay to just not let them on juries for being black, as long as you say that it wasn't about them being black. And there was actually a court case where the Supreme Court straight up ruled that you can say that he had shifty eyes, you can say that his hair was too long, you can say literally anything, you can come up with literally any excuse. As long as you're not saying it's because he's black, it can totally be
well, that's
because he's
with our
black.
Conservative Supreme Court.
Right, one of whom died, and I mean, there is no God, but if there was a God, we would owe him a great favor today. For ending the life of one criminal. So, but the point I was trying to make, and this is all getting kind of far afield, was that, no, Sheldon Whitehouse didn't actually say those things. But when asked a direct question, he pivoted to a question that was much easier for him to answer.
Yes.
That was only vaguely related to the actual question he was asked. And that should really tell you all you need to know about what he really thinks. So...
I am not sure if he really believed that the tolls were a good idea, from what he answered. He said that I'm glad the General Assembly figured out how to take care of the roads and the bridges.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that's the particular phrasing he used, the bullshit, namby-pamby phrasing.
Well, he didn't want to answer the question.
Exactly,
so,
right.
Yeah.
So, and this is something for our listeners, the major takeaway, the one thing I most want to impress upon you is this is a tool that you can use when you're trying to unpack any politician and any lawyer, although they're usually the same, there's a huge amount of overlap between those
Yes.
two groups. But whenever you're speaking to any politician or any lawyer or listening to them on TV, listen very carefully. When they're asked a direct question, they often, and when I say often, I mean 99% of the time, they don't answer the question that they're asked. They answer a different question, and they try to make you think that they answered the question.
Well, that's not even unusual.
They were
I mean,
asked.
they actually say to do this when you're in politics or to answer a different, to change the question. I mean, that's something they you know,
Right, I mean, they teach you to be deliberately disingenuous. They teach you to be full of shit and
or not to
cowardly
answer the question.
on purpose. Yeah, not to answer the question. And there are times where that's appropriate.
You
Like
know
if somebody
who does
says,
that, though?
like if somebody
Yeah.
says, Grant, how much do you enjoy having a dog lick your balls clean? There is no right way to answer
Oh,
that
jeez.
question. You just don't answer that question because it's a bullshit question, right? But if you're a politician and your job, to the extent that you have a job, because most of these guys don't really work or do anything as near as I can tell, but your job is to have opinions about things, right? And so for a politician just over and over and over again answer a question with some namby-pamby bullshit, it's, to me, they're not doing their fucking jobs.
But
You
I
know?
have
I mean,
to
it's a
bring
simple
this up.
question. It's a simple question for Senator Whitehouse is, do you or do you not support
But you know who says
this
what they want?
natural gas plant? What?
Trump.
Yeah, and he's insanely popular. You know why that is? Because people are
he's
tired of voting for politicians. People hate politicians and they fucking hate lawyers, right? And that's the only people that ever run for office. And so, you know, you look at Reagan, who was probably the worst president of our collective lifetimes. He was so terrible. But he was able to get into power. He's still remembered as being tremendously popular because he was a shitty B-movie actor. He wasn't an actual...
He had a name.
Right. He wasn't a lawyer, and he didn't talk like a lawyer, right? And people hate lawyers, and people hate career politicians because they always talk like they're full of shit. They never answer a direct question. And I'm not just talking about times
You know
where the
who
question
does?
is really unfair.
Bernie, I think, answers the questions. What do
He
you think of that?
does. Or if he's not going to answer the question, he refuses to answer the question like a person of character, which is, I'm not going to answer that question. That's how you don't answer a question you don't want to answer. You just say, I refuse to answer that question. Right? And then the voters can make up their minds about whether or not they want to hold that against you or raise you up for it. Right? But if you don't want to answer the question, say you don't want to answer the question. It's not like a college debate team. Because I used to be on the college debate team. And
Oh, did you?
it was funny. I did it for one semester, and I gave it up because I didn't like being deliberately disingenuous. I didn't want to be a lawyer because you were trying to score points. The point of a debate was it's like a court case on TV, which is of course nothing like an actual court case in real life. But on TV, you know, you have the defense attorney, you have the prosecutor, and they each try to sling a line of bullshit that makes you believe that their guy is the guy, right? And it's the judge's job to parse this bullshit and unpack it for the jury. And then it's the jury's job to decide, you know, between these two people who are both working very hard to be full of shit, which one's bullshit is closer to the truth, right? And college debate is very much like that. You're trying to score points with the moderator, and you're trying to get them to go along with what you're saying. You're trying to really trip your opponent up and get them to make a rhetorical mistake. But they'll ask you to debate things that are important, weighty public policy, like, hey, how should we deal with the problem of homelessness, or how should we deal with economic development? And whenever we would get to the question of how you pay for it, the debate team trainers would just say you're going to pay for it with cigarette taxes because there's nothing to attack there. I'm like, that's bullshit. I don't think cigarette taxes need to be even higher than they already are. Or if they are, it should be tied to something to do with the public health consequences of cigarettes. Not just tax them higher because cigarette smokers are a disfavored
So your point
group.
is that people are tired of politicians not answering the question or saying, "I won't answer the question."
No, I think if a politician says I won't answer the question, that at least you can respect, because that's how a person of character deals with a question they just don't want to answer. Because then you're being honest. I'm just telling you I won't answer that question, and then a third party can make up their mind about what that means. You know, whether or not they're going to factor that into their decision about whether to vote for that candidate.
Let's talk about people that lie.
Let's talk about people that lie.
You know, I'm very upset.
Since we're already talking about lawyers and politicians.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh. So I'm very upset about Gina Raimondo's non-transparent administration. What do you think about that?
So I just want to clarify, if we have any viewers that aren't Rhode Islanders, Sheldon Whitehouse is our senator, so he's one of our Congress creepers, and Gina Raimondo is our governor. And I hate her guts. She was the biggest loser in the Democratic primary and the biggest loser in the general election.
Well,
that somehow
explain
means you
that.
get to be governor. Well, because we don't have an instant runoff system, if you have a big crowded primary field and there's multiple people running for office, you don't need to get 50% of the votes plus one. You just need to get more votes than any other one candidate, because we don't do runoffs in most states, right? And so, whereas I think if somebody gets to be the governor, they ought to have 50% of the people vote for him at some point. Well, what happened was we don't have runoffs. We don't have runoffs because it makes it harder to determine the outcome of the election in advance. So Raimondo, even though she's widely hated, managed to get more votes than any other one candidate. She got 40,
40, yeah.
30, 38, high 30s, low 40s in the primary. And then she got, I think, about the same amount in the general. High 30s, low 40s.
Oh, yeah, because of we had an independent, yes.
Yeah, well, we had an independent. We had, I think we had a couple of independents. I don't know. I don't even remember. You suppress those horrible memories. But the point is, and if you're already going to sleep, I'm sorry, we're not as good at this as we should be. But the point is, these are Rhode Island politicians that everybody in Rhode Island knows, but the people in, say, Oregon might not have any idea who they're talking about. Sorry, so
Okay.
continue with Raimondo. Yeah, lack of transparency, big problem. Go on.
It is. I don't know what to talk about. We should have came up with topics to talk about beforehand. But I know you can go on and on about Gina Raimondo.
Well, that was kind of the topic that I wanted to talk about. Was just how
Well, I hate how she rammed down our throats the tolls. They purposely did it completely to not get input from the general public.
So, to those of you who don't know, the tolls were a big thing here. I'm going to run to the fridge and steal one of Jennifer Seltzer waters, and she's going to explain to our Oregon listeners what the tolls is.
All right.
Go on, Jennifer.
Okay, so Rhode Island supposedly has the worst bridges in America, and we never have enough money to pay for them. So the governor came up with an idea to put up tolls to pay for the bridges. Now you're saying, oh, okay, but the thing you have to understand is that just putting up the tolls is going to cost $60 million. And not only that, they have to borrow the money to put up the tolls. So there's issues with the bonds, and also usually in Rhode Island, when we vote in November, we have to vote on any bonds. But she made this particular bond in a way that the general public didn't have to vote on it, and didn't have to. They should, but she basically came up with this idea, obviously, so that the general public wouldn't say what they felt, which everyone knows that they do not want it. So that's
Delicious seltzer. So I'm going to save Jennifer from her burps there. It's okay if you burp, by the way. I don't think the microphone is powerful enough to pick it up. If we do, we'll just catch it in post-production. It's not like anybody's listening to this anyway. So, forgive me. If you are listening to this, please, I was joking. And if you're not listening to this, I don't care what you think. So, the other salient point here is that you got to remember that, put it in a historical context, there was this huge debacle last year where they wanted the taxpayers basically to pay for this 100 plus million new ball stadium. They wanted to move our minor league baseball team 5 miles down the road, and they wanted to pay they wanted the taxpayers to pay for the privilege of building a new stadium
Yes.
right after they paid for the privilege of refurbishing the old stadium, which is really quite nice. And the elites were all in favor of it. The fix was in. But then a guy died within a week after speaking to me, and he ended up being pretty crucial to the movement. They lost some momentum on that. By the time that was over, there was such a public outrising that the elites didn't get their fucking stadium because
No.
they couldn't go against the will of like 90% of the people. All thought it was a terrible idea. And so I think that the lesson that
it's actually very good that the general public knows that that was a bad idea. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't buy into, oh, let's have a brand new baseball stadium in Providence.
well, I think
You know?
the general population is
Sick of
is
people getting
much.
money.
I mean, people are stupid. And that's not to exclude anyone. I mean, Jennifer is a moron, and I make her look smart. But,
What?
I mean, we're all dumb. But, so I don't mean to say that, that people are smart and draw some sort of strange contrast between people and me, because I'm quite dumb. So, the point, though, is that people are smarter than politicians think they are, because people think that honestly the population of the state, that the only things they want to do are sleep and drink, and I don't even know what the politicians think of us. Their contempt for us is so, their contempt for the voters is so profound and all-encompassing that I can't really describe it to you. And so I think the lesson that they learned was, boy, if we step all over people to the point where 90% of them are against us, then they might actually rise up. And so they've learned from their mistakes not to actually get buy-in from the people, but to do stuff so quickly. We might call this the shock doctrine theory of political.
It completely is.
Yeah, where you just immediately, as soon as the legislature opens, you just ram a proposal through, and anybody who doesn't go along with the proposal is dismissed from their jobs, and that's just the way it is. And we could tell you about, although we're running long on this subject, and you're probably already going to sleep, so we could talk a lot about the people who have been fired, kicked off their committee positions, denied employment because of their even token objections to this tolls plan, which went through, we had been talking about it for months. Everybody hated the idea. So the legislature said, hey, everybody hates this idea. Let's just do it in a week. And so they did it in a week. It was literally a week. The bill was on the floor. It was voted on.
Yep.
Anyone who didn't vote for it was getting the axe. And everybody went along with it, including some of our supposed progressive allies up on Capitol Hill. But none of that is important in terms of the broader insight into politics. It just goes to show that, these people are...
I really think that Gina read the shock doctrine. Or maybe not read it, but realized that that was the way to go.
The Shock Doctrine is a pretty good book. I mean, definitely, if you haven't read it and you read political books, then you should definitely read The Shock Doctrine. But the problem is you shouldn't have to read a whole bunch of books in order to unpack bullshit by politicians. And that's really what I wanted to do in this episode, is to give you some basic tools that'll consistently allow you to unpack political bullshit. That was a topic I decided on after watching Senator Whitehouse bluster and pontificate his way, into saying, yes, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm totally in favor of burning every scrap of natural gas. So Jennifer might think I'm being unfair, but literally, they said, hey, there's this new natural gas plant going in Burrillville. It's burning not just normal natural gas, but fracked gas, which a whole lot of people have come out against, which a lot of states don't do. We don't really have that much of a deficit regionally of non-fracked natural gas, and we need to be moving away from fossil fuels in the long run anyway. So what do you think about that, Senator Whitehouse? And he said, well, I don't have an opinion on it, but here's all these good talking points for why it's a great idea. He said, we should do it because of this, and this, but I don't have an opinion on it. And I'm like, you are such a piece. Do you not think? I mean, clearly he doesn't think that we know how to unpack that. He thinks that we're so dumb.
He actually said, I have nothing to do with where it's located. I have nothing to do with who we choose. It's like, what does that have to do with whether you agree with that
exactly.
it or not?
We asked him for, his opinion, not for his excuse for not stopping it. Because there are some times when you ask for the excuse for not stopping it. You know, you might say, hey, Hillary Clinton, why did you vote for the Iraq War? And, you know, you might ask a question like that. Or you might say, hey, Bernie.
She believed
right.
George Bush, that there was
yeah,
weapons of mass destruction.
Which is funny because no other Democrat did except those that were on Capitol Hill. It's funny how all those people thought, oh, we saw the special intelligence and we were so much smarter than you, Democratic Party voters, because large majorities of the Democratic Party was against it. So you'd think that large majorities of Democratic Party politicians would be against it. But they all fucking voted for it because they thought, and I don't even think that it's because they, I don't even think it's because they were pro-war. It's because they were shown intelligence and their need to believe that they were special, that they and they alone had special information about the war and that they knew better than all the rest of the country and that sooner or later their prescience was going to be vindicated in voting for this war. I genuinely believe that was part of the power of the appeal that the Bush made, is that, you know, you will be vindicated later on, even though you're now going to take this noble vote, but you know better than the drooling retards that vote for you.
Jeez.
Right? And politicians just ate that shit up. And when it turns out that no, actually, those of us who are the great unwashed masses knew better than our elected representatives, well, now they have all sorts of excuses. You know, first it was, well, we just got the timeline wrong, and now they're told to retreat. And of course, here you have Bernie Sanders, who voted against the damn thing in the first place, but
he knew what's up.
Right, you know, and I think that's why we're seeing so many people. I mean, my buddy Brandon out in Oregon, who probably doesn't appreciate being named in the show, but because he was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and so is his sister and his whole family. But I've never seen him take a political point on anything, and we've clashed before on broader cultural things, because I'm a bit of a militant feminist and he not so much. But it's funny because I go on Facebook and every day it's like him or his sister or a member of his family talking about how great Bernie Sanders is, you know, how full of crap Hillary Clinton is. And really, it's not as if Hillary Clinton is uniquely full of crap. I don't think that she's any more full of crap than a million other people who've run for office. I don't think that she's much more full of crap than Sheldon Whitehouse, for example. But people are just tired of voting for slick lawyers who are full of shit. You know, they want people...
Well, she does change her mind. I mean, change her position.
Oh,
even worse than a regular politician. I
just think that she's had so many different jobs. You know, she's been an opportunist for so long and in so many different contexts that it's easy to stack up reversals. You know, but I mean, we're just talking about Sheldon Whitehouse. I mean, he's built a brand for himself as this legendary environmentalist, but he can't even bring himself to say, hey, maybe there's nothing I can do about it, but we really shouldn't be building fracked gas in my fucking state.
Yes, it is.
You know?
It is kind of insane.
And when, I'll tell you, what poisoned me against him was we went to his fundraiser last year.
Yes.
This is the first time I think I've ever been to his fundraiser. This would be the last. I go to local politicians where they might actually occasionally say the truth. But anyway, he was talking about how he's environmental champion. We got to hear his speeches about, you know, how we should send him back to the Senate so he could fight for the environment and climate change and blah, blah, blah. Well, all of the beer at his
clam bake
was served in little plastic cups, right? Some of it was in a bottle, but they didn't give you the bottle. No, they pour the bottle into the cup and then hand you the cup. Although they did have taps.
They probably don't want to have you break glass.
Right. You know, like I'm going to break a bottle and then cut you at a fundraiser. Yeah. So, but yeah, so they give you the plastic cups. But then there was no place to recycle them. You just had to throw them in the trash. Right? And I mentioned this to him. He's like, oh yeah, we'll get on that. And I guarantee you that if we go to his fundraiser next year, there will be no recycle bin for the plastic cups. Because he took my opinion and he wiped his ass with it. Because he doesn't actually give a shit about the environment. You know, he doesn't care. He's interested in style, not substance. You know? So...
And then what he said about Burrillville is just another you know, situation where he did it again. He shows that he really doesn't care.
He really doesn't care. I mean, I think that if we manage to make it to where he's tremendously unpopular, he'll then suddenly see the light and say, I fought for this all along, but thank you so much for holding me accountable and blah, blah, blah. I mean, these lawyers are so good at spin, but they're so full of shit. And the problem is that when that's all you can get, when every candidate in the race is a full of shit lawyer, then you're just going to vote for the full of shit lawyer who tends to go along with your viewpoint the most, right? But when you have an option for somebody who's not a full of shit lawyer, then you're going to run right to them. You know, I mean, people
Right.
talk a lot about the Republican presidential primary. I mean, if you look at all the people who have been the front runner before the current front runner, right? The thing they all have in common is they're all people who are not slick lawyers, do not come from
Are
inside
not
politics.
regular politicians.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's people are just so hungry for anybody that's not another fucking lawyer, another fucking full of shit career politician
True.
who will just tell you whatever they want to hear, you know. And it's funny because in the Democratic Party, I mean, we've seen this massive surge for Bernie Sanders, but it's been completely unreported on by the media. All the other political elites are afraid to endorse him, you know, and every so often there's a defection, but, you know, for the most part, they're all together because they just don't want the narrative to shift. They want you to continue to settle for shitty lawyers who are full of crap, but who might theoretically share more of their views than the shitty, full of crap lawyer who's also on the ticket, you know, against them.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty good for today.
Yeah, I guess this was supposed to be 20 minutes, and we've gone on for almost half an hour now, so maybe we should call it good. I feel like I had a lot of other things to say, so I'll write them down. I don't really do that. I like to shoot from the hip. But
Yeah.
I'll see if I can write them down and be all organized. You know.
Next time.
Or I'll do what Congress people do, and I'll get an unpaid intern to write them down for me on the promise of later on getting a bullshit patronage job. So.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for listening in, if anybody is listening in. And this
What's
is the
the
first episode of the Grim Wisdom Podcast. Hope you
Grim
enjoyed
wisdom. All right.
it. You have any last words, Jennifer,
Oh,
before we
no.
sign off? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks again.